biggest hero. Captain Paul Watson is a marine wildlife conservation and environmental activist. He was one of the founding members and directors of Greenpeace. In 1977, he left Greenpeace and founded the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. A renowned speaker, accomplished author, master mariner, and lifelong environmentalist, Captain Watson has been awarded many honors for his dedication to the oceans and to the planet. Among many commendations for his work, he received the Genesis Award for Lifetime Achievement in 1998, was named as one of the top 20 environmental heroes of the 20th century by Time magazine in 2000, and was inducted to the U.S. Animal Rights Hall of Fame in Washington, D.C. in 2002. He was also awarded the Amazon Peace Prize by the President of Ecuador in 2007, and in 2012, Captain Watson became only the second person to be awarded the Jules Verne Award, dedicated to environmentalists and adventurers. In 2019, he was awarded a commendation from Governor Ned Lamont from the state of Connecticut for 50 years as an environmental conservation activist. Here he is, Captain Paul Watson. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Can you all hear me very well?
Yes, we can.
Well, it's a pleasure to be speaking to you in Florida from snowy Vermont, where I am right now. And I guess the best thing to do is to, catch you all up on what Sea Shepherd has been doing for this last year. Some of you may know that we have the world's largest conservation fleet. We call it Neptune's Navy. So we have 12 ships that are out on the ocean, defending marine biodiversity, and active all throughout the year. And just a quick roundup on that, our vessel, the Bob Barker's recently returned from the coast of West Africa, where we've been working with the West African nations to stop poaching in their waters, and that's been a very successful campaign. A couple of months ago, we were off the coast of Gabon, and we found a fishing vessel from Europe that had 2 whales in the net. Now, we ordered the captain to release those whales, and he refused. But what he didn't know was that on board our ship was the Minister of the Environment for Gabon. So not only did he get in a lot of trouble, but the minister the next day passed a law banning all shrimp fishing in Gabonese waters, as it's too destructive. We've arrested over 72 poaching vessels in West African waters over the last year and a half, and we're now in official partnerships with Gabon and Gambia, Sao Tome, Cabo Verde, Namibia, Tanzania, and Togo and Liberia. And that means that we go into their waters and patrol, and the poachers never know whose waters we're going to be in. We actually have 2 ships involved in that. The other one was the Sam Simon. And the Sam Simon's right now just getting out of dry dock in Lisbon, Portugal. And its next assignment is to go into the Bay of Biscay to defend dolphins from the French trawling fleet. For every year, about 10,000 dolphins are killed as a bycatch by the French fishing industry. It's illegal in Europe, it's illegal in France, but very little action is being taken. We've had to go to the lengths of actually taking some of the bodies of the dead dolphins and transporting them to Paris and placing them in front of the Eiffel Tower to get the attention of the French media. And of course, we got arrested for that, but we won in the courts. But that's one of our big campaigns in Europe. The other one, of course, is to stop the killing of pilot whales and dolphins in the Danish Faroe Islands. About a couple months ago, 1,428 Pacific white-striped dolphins were slaughtered in one day in the Faroe Islands. And this is a very difficult campaign. We've been fighting it for years. There's no real economic reason for them to be killing these dolphins and pilot whales. They do it for sport. It's for fun. They say, well, we've been doing it for hundreds of years, and who are you to tell us not to do it? These pilot whales and dolphins do not belong to the Faroese, and we're fighting them on every level, going in there, intervening directly with the killing, documenting it. And one of the things that has come about in the last few years is that for the first time, we now have Faroese people joining us, Faroese activists, and people have gotten the message that this is simply unacceptable in the 21st century. So that movement is getting stronger. We have two vessels right now in the Mediterranean, the Sea Eagle and the Conrad, and their job is to stop poaching activities in the Mediterranean by confiscating these things called fish aggregating devices, which attract fish. We've confiscated thousands of them, and we're not too popular amongst the fishing communities in the Mediterranean, but we're working in partnership with the government in Italy to do this. And in fact, one of our captains right now is a recently retired admiral of the Italian Navy, is a former chief of staff of the Italian Navy, and he's now captaining one of our vessels. Our vessel, the Ocean Warrior, is presently in Panama and recently returned from the Eastern Tropical Pacific, where we sailed into the midst of the huge Chinese squid fleet. And about 400 of these vessels, and we caught them in numerous illegalities and infractions, and reported that all, documented and reported that to the various communities. And in this respect, we're working in partnership with the governments of Peru, Panama, and we're also working with the government of Mexico. And in Mexico, what we're doing is working to prevent the extinction of the vaquita porpoise. We recently did a survey. They're still there. There are less than 17 of these small little, they're the smallest cetaceans in the world. There's less than 17 of them. And I'm quite confident they would now be extinct if it wasn't for the fact that we've been there every year from 2015. And we've confiscated over 150,000 meters of illegal gill nets that have been set. And what we do is we patrol the vaquita refuge to keep the poachers out of there. And we're in partnership with the Mexican Navy on this. We have Mexican Navy personnel who are working with us on that. Our vessel, the Martin Sheen, is our only sailing vessel, and it's also working out of Mexico. And I'm very proud to report that in November of last year, in 2020, we discovered a brand new species of beaked whales. And I never thought that anybody could actually discover a new species of whales, being that they're that big, but we did. And that's a great scientific discovery. It's an entirely new species, and we're working to do more research in those waters to find out exactly what the state of affairs is and the relationship between all of the various species within that ecosystem. In the Sea of Cortez, we have 3 former U.S. Coast Guard patrol boats, which we've named the Sharpie, the Farley Mowat, and the John Paul DeJoria, and their job is to protect the endangered vaquita porpoise. So that campaign is an ongoing one, and as long as the vaquita are threatened in the Sea of Cortez, we will continue to be there. You know, back in when I first established Sea Shepherd, it was a vegetarian, all the ships were vegetarian. And that was until 1999. In 1999, all the ships became vegan. So our vessels, all of them are all 100% vegan vessels. Now, people don't have to be vegan to crew, but they certainly have to be vegan while they're on board because there's really no other choice. And it's interesting, like how many people who came on board and found that they didn't die after a couple of months on a vegan diet. And some of them were actually astounded that they were so much healthier after their time on the ship. So we believe that we've actually introduced veganism to hundreds of our crew from all around the world. And right now, for instance, at any given time, we have about 250 volunteers from about 25 different countries on board Sea Shepherd ships. And we're really proud of our vegan chefs who come from all over the world and have present an incredible cuisine to all of the participants that are on board. I, right from the very beginning, felt that we had to have vegetarian and then vegan vessels because we are literally eating the ocean alive. And the diminishment of biodiversity in the ocean is astounding. Every single commercial fishery now is in a state of collapse. And by 2050, well, there won't be any commercial fishery because there won't be enough fish in order to sustain it. The only reason that commercial fisheries continue to survive today is because of huge government subsidies, about $76 billion in government subsidies from all around these various countries. Right now, for instance, in African waters, we're fighting Asian and European fishing vessels that are plundering African waters and subsidized by their government. You know, you hear about the pirates of Somalia and the pirates in the Gulf of Guinea. They're not pirates. They're basically impoverished fishermen who've been driven to piracy by the real pirates. And the real pirates are the Asian and European industrialized fishing operations. Back in 2015 at the climate change conference in Paris, I was advocating that if we're going to really be serious about addressing climate change, then we have to be serious about protecting interdependence and diversity in the ocean, because the ocean is the life support system for this planet. I guess you can put it this way: imagine the Earth as a spaceship, which is what it is, on this incredible voyage around the Milky Way galaxy. And every spaceship has a life support system, and that life support system provides us with the air we breathe, the food we eat, and regulates climate and temperature. And that's what the ocean does. And that life support system is maintained by a crew of earthling beings, not us. We humans, we're passengers. We're having a wonderful time amusing ourselves. But what we're doing is killing off crew members. And there's only so many crew members, those engineers that maintain those ecosystems, that you can lose before the system begins to fall apart. Since 1950, there's been a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton populations in the sea. 40%, and that could be verified through Scientific America had an incredible article on this. And why is that important? Phytoplankton provides up to 70% of the oxygen in the air we breathe. Phytoplankton sequesters enormous amounts of carbon every year. If phytoplankton were to go extinct in the sea, we would all die. We do not live on this planet without phytoplankton. And one of the reasons that phytoplankton numbers are being diminished is because we're diminishing marine mammal, seabird, and fish populations. Because phytoplankton, which is basically plant plankton, it's the foundation of all life in the sea, and actually the foundation of all life on the planet. And what it needs in order to grow or to thrive are essential nutrients, primarily nitrogen and iron. And those nutrients are provided by the diversity in the ocean through the feces of all of these various species, and also the bodies of the animals when they die. One blue whale every day, for example, defecates 3 tons of manure, which floats on the surface and provides a nutrient base for the phytoplankton. So in this respect, whales are really the farmers in the ocean. So we're also looking at the possibility of the eradication of shark populations in our lifetime. And sharks are absolutely essential for maintaining the ecological integrity of ecosystems around the world. And when they begin to diminish, everything else diminishes along with it. The apex predator is responsible for the health of our reef ecosystems, and every fish in the ocean, its size, its camouflage, its speed, has been molded by sharks over 450 million years. It's incredible. These species of animals, which have been with us for over 450 million years, could be wiped out in our lifetime by us. We're right now in what is called the Anthropocene, or the 6th major extinction. And what's unique about this is that one species, ourselves, are responsible for this. And we will lose more species of plants and animals between the year 2000 and the year 2065 than we've lost over the last 65.2 million years. And that's incredible. But for the most part, people aren't aware of it. People don't care about it. But we care about it. And that's why we're out on the ocean doing everything we possibly can to protect marine biodiversity. Everything from the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, all the way up to the great whales. And our campaigns focus on numerous kinds of species, everything from protecting sea cucumbers in the Galapagos to protecting crustaceans on the West Coast in Alaska and British Columbia. And we're also very much involved in our marine debris campaigns, which means the collecting of marine debris, plastic, primarily discarded fishing gear. And what we actually focus on is remote areas. So in the last year, we took all the plastic debris and fishing gear off the Cocos Island or Cocos Keeling Island in the Indian Ocean, very remote island. We cleaned the beaches in the northern territories of Australia. We took 45 tons of marine gear off of Cocos Island, off of Costa Rica, and we have beach cleanups all in every community where Sea Shepherd has a support group. And really, we're getting to the point where we're going to have more plastic in the ocean than we have fish. I think that one of the things that we have to understand if we're going to survive is that we cannot live on this planet with this kind of anthropocentric mentality that we have, this idea that we're the most dominant, the most important species on the planet. That's an illusion. We're not even anywhere close to it. You know, a few years ago, I had a reporter from the Fox network call me up and he said, "Did you say that worms and bees and trees are more important than people?" I said, "Yeah, I think I did say that." He said, "How can you say something so outrageous that worms and bees and trees are more important than people?" I said, "Well, I said it because it's a fact. Worms, trees, and bees can exist without us. We don't, they don't need us, but we sure as hell need them. Without bees and worms and trees and fish and so many other species, we would go extinct. We do not survive on this planet without them. And unless we learn to live in harmony with all of these other species, we're simply not going to survive." The three basic laws of ecology are: one, the law of diversity, that the strength of any ecosystem is dependent upon diversity within it. Two, the law of interdependence, that all species within an ecosystem are interdependent with each other. In fact, they maintain and support each other. And three is the law of finite resources, that there's a limit of growth, a limit to carrying capacity. And when one species, like ourselves, steals from the carrying capacity of other species, that causes diminishment both in diversity and interdependence. And in the long run, that affects our own survival. And so unless we begin to look at the world from a biocentric point of view, which is what a lot of indigenous cultures actually do, this understanding that we're part of everything and not master and dominant over everything, that all of those other species are just as important as we are. You know, back in 1995, Laurie Garrett wrote a book called The Coming Plague, where she predicted a lot of things that are happening right now. And one of the thing that she predicted was the increase in the zoonomic transmission of viruses. And what this is caused by is diminishment of species and diminishment of ecosystems. And when you destroy ecosystems or other species, the viruses associated with those particular species need somewhere to go. And we're a very attractive host with almost 8 billion of us. And so that's where you're going to see viruses jumping from species that are close to us, from either domestic animals, bats or monkeys or others, jumping to us. And added to this is the emerging pathogens coming from melting permafrost. For instance, in 2017, 1,000 reindeers and one human being died from anthrax spore that was released from the permafrost. And this is also going to be an ongoing problem. Vaccines may be a Band-Aid, but they're not the solution. The solution is the protection of ecosystems and the protection of species. We need to make sure that all of these other species survive in order to keep us all healthy, because our life depends upon them. And if we don't, we're going to see more and more zoonomic transmission of viruses. And added that to a collapsing ecosystem, the future does not look very good. And so climate change is really being caused by the fact that we are over exploiting all these resources on this planet and producing too much carbon, which is becoming more and more difficult to sequester because of the destruction of rainforests and, as I mentioned, the diminishment of phytoplankton in the ocean. So what Sea Shepherd has now, Sea Shepherd is not an organization. It started out as an organization, but today it's a global movement. And we realized back in 2012, when the Japanese government came after me personally and Sea Shepherd in the US, that you can stop an individual and you can shut down an organization, but you cannot stop a movement. And that's where our strength is. So we're in about 45 different countries. They're all separate entities, but it all works under the umbrella of Sea Shepherd Global. And that is and Sea Shepherd Global operates our ships and our campaigns. In addition to our ship campaigns, we also have campaigns dealing with other issues. We just had a trip up the Amazon to protect the river dolphins in Amazonia. We have a crew right now on the island of Mayotte, which is an island between Madagascar and Mozambique. It's a French territory, and what they're doing there is protecting sea turtle populations from poachers. It's a real problem there. We just successfully won a lawsuit in La Reunion Island about the killing of sharks there. And one of the things that we discovered about sharks that's interesting is that the three main places in the world where shark attacks are most prominent are Queensland and Western Australia and La Reunion Island. And what do those three places have in common? They all have shark control programs. That is, they go out and they kill the sharks in order to protect people from sharks. Well, what that does, and they don't seem to realize it, is that, for instance, in La Reunion Island, when you kill off the sharks, it creates a vacuum in that territory, which brings in sharks from the outside. And these new sharks are more territorial as they're trying to establish a territory, and therefore they become far more aggressive. So if you just maintain the system and allow the sharks who are already there and comfortably in that situation to live in harmony within their ecosystem, you don't create that chaos, which is results from shark kill programs. Somebody said, well, sharks make it very dangerous for us to swim in the ocean. But, there's about 5 fatal shark attacks every year, only 5. And when you consider the hundreds of millions of people that go into the ocean every year, that's not much. It's more dangerous to play golf. More golfers are killed on golf courses every year by being struck by lightning or getting bitten by bees and having allergies than are killed by sharks. In fact, more people every year statistically are killed from Coke machines falling on them. 9, that's the average. And so, this here idea of the shark as a monster is something which has no basis in truth. The real monsters, well, we killed 95 million sharks last year. So we're the ones who are terrorizing the ocean, not the sharks. We need sharks to maintain a healthy ecosystem. We need to live in harmony with them, like we need to live in harmony with all other species. Sea Shepherd's concentrated most of our work on stopping poaching, the illegal operations that are at the sea that are causing the diminishment of fish populations. Poachers are out of control, and there's 2 types of poachers. There's the blatant outlaw poachers, and then there's those poachers who are subsidized and supported by their governments. Spain, for example, is one of the major supporters of illegal fishing around the world. In 2015, we had the longest pursuit of a poacher in maritime history. We found the toothfish poaching vessel, the Thunder, in the waters off of Antarctica. Now, toothfish, you might not know what that is, but it's marketed as Chilean sea bass. It's not from Chile, and it's not a bass, but it's a more marketable term. But we found the vessel, the Thunder, off the coast of Antarctica, and our vessel, the Bob Barker, gave chase, and that chase lasted 110 days. Our vessel, the Sam Simon, came in behind to confiscate that net that had been put into the water at a depth of 2 kilometers. Our crew, it took us 110 hours to pull 72 kilometers of net from the bottom, and that net weighed 70 tons. That's the kind of, equipment that they're using. And the pursuit, like I said, lasted 110 days, all the way to the waters of Sao Tome on West Africa, in equatorial West Africa. And with this Thunder having no place to go, because we were now working in partnership with Interpol on this, the captain of the Thunder decided to sink his own ship right in front of us, and we documented it. And he did this to destroy the evidence of his illegal activities, because he knew that anywhere he went, he would be arrested. But that didn't help him. He did sink his ship, but our crew boarded the sinking ship, and we got the evidence. The specimens of toothfish, plus the logbooks and the cell phones and the computers. And we rescued his crew, all 42 of them. And that ended up with the captain and his 2 officers going to prison for 3 years in Sao Tome, the company being fined 17 million euros. And we repatriated the Indonesian crew, who really, were almost like slave labor on board that vessel. We also shut down 5 other toothfish poaching operations, one in Malaysia. We got the government in Indonesia when we chased one of them into the waters, we got the government of Indonesia to blow it up. And we shut down toothfish poaching really in the Southern Ocean. In 2015 also, our vessel, the Steve Irwin, discovered a Chinese drift netting operation in the Indian Ocean. And drift nets have been illegal now since 1997. A drift net can be up to 100 miles long, and anything caught into it, it's like a spider web, is killed. So we documented this, and then we chased them. We chased these Chinese fleet all the way to China. And when we got to the coast of China, there were 2 Chinese warships there. And the fishing boats called for help and said they were being chased by pirates, meaning us. And so the Chinese warships contacted us and said, well, what's going on here? And we explained that we had caught them fishing illegally, and we had it all documented. And to our surprise, the Chinese Navy said, well, bring them in. And we escorted Chinese fishing vessels up a river in China, where they were arrested, the captains lost their licenses, and the companies were fined. So when you collect the evidence and you present that evidence, they have to take action to do something about it. And that's what we've been focusing on, is collecting, documenting, getting the evidence, and physically intervening against these illegal fishing operations. And we're now working with many governments. In fact, we're now speaking with and working with the United States government. There's courses on what we do, which are being taught at the U.S. Navy War College, because governments are becoming aware that a real threat to national security is overfishing and the destruction of life in the ocean, and that something has to be done about it. And I think that Sea Shepherd has been doing a trailblazing work in order to get governments to sit up and take notice as to what is going on. And at the same time, we're also hoping that people will get the message that, look, we got to stop eating the oceans. And even when you say people who don't eat fish, they're still eating fish, because about 40% of all of the fish that is caught from the ocean isn't eaten by people. It's fed to animals, to cows and to chickens and to domestic salmon and to fur farms. And in fact, chickens today on factory farms eat more fish than all of the albatrosses and puffins in the world. And pigs are now eating more fish than all the sharks in the world. This is the kind of abnormal ecosystem that we've created, completely out of touch with reality, where chickens and pigs become the largest aquatic predators on the planet. And so we're trying to get people to understand these connections, that we're literally eating the ocean alive. The ocean is, like I said, the life support system of the planet. In fact, understand what the ocean is. I mean, when anybody thinks of the ocean, they think of the sea. But the sea is just one part of the ocean. This is the planet ocean. And what that means, it's water in continuous circulation. And sometimes it's in the sea, sometimes it's in the clouds above you that you can see right now. Sometimes it's in ice, sometimes it's underground, and sometimes it's in the cells of every plant and animal on this planet. And it's constantly flowing through all of those different mediums. The water in your body right now, which is about 70% water, that water was recently in the bodies of other animals, in the plants, was recently underground, was probably once locked up in ice, and it was once pissed by dinosaurs. It's the same water. And that is what makes this planet what it is the water planet. Water is the lifeblood of the entire world. And it operates in the same way. It conveys nutrients to the cells. It removes waste from the cells of all living things. And so that, I think, is a perspective that we really need to understand, that we are the ocean. All of us together, all living things are the ocean. So one other thing I'd like to focus on is, over the years, we've had to understand that in order to get our message across, we've had to understand the world that we live in. And it's really a media culture. And that means you got to get people's attention. That's one of the reasons we developed the Whale Wars show originally, because I went to all of the different networks and I said, look, the biggest show on Discovery right now is a bunch of guys who go out in a very cold and remote area every week and catch crabs. And I can get you some men and women who are going to go to an even more remote, colder place to save whales. It's got to be more compelling than catching crabs every week. And they went for it, and it became their #1 show on the planet. But we also have to understand that the media is even more important than the message. Recently, our film Seaspiracy reached millions and millions of people who otherwise would not have reached because it was on the medium of Netflix. And it's really important to get it on that. Because Blackfish got onto CNN, was shown dozens of times, it reached people that it wouldn't otherwise reach. And this is where we cannot continue to keep preaching to the converted, people who already understand the problem. We have to reach out to people who are not aware of the problems. And that's why our approach with our documentaries is to do that. And to do that, you have to dramatize, you have to have a story, you have to entertain. And so that is the nature of the media. I once said that the 4 elements of media are quite simple. It's sex, scandal, violence, and celebrity. And if you don't have one of those elements, you don't have a story. If you have all 4 elements, you have a super story. And so this is what we try to focus on, is building our story based on those 4 elements. One of the reasons that we have a board of advisors of celebrities, because, as I like to say, because we have Christian Bale and Richard Dean Anderson and William Shatner and others like that's why people take us seriously, because we have Batman, we have Captain Kirk, we have Pierce Brosnan as a James Bond, and we even have the former president of the United States, Martin Sheen. And so this gives credibility in a world which is defined by the media. And so those are the kind of games we have to play to get people's attention, and it actually works. So as a result, we've become more effective through the use of media, and also through our unique approach of directly intervening against illegal activities on a high seas and on a global basis. So I guess that pretty much finishes what I have to say, and I'd be very pleased to answer any questions anybody has.
Thanks, Captain Watson. Does anybody have questions?
Really hear anything, so if anybody have to have a questions relayed to me, I guess.
Yes.
We partake in a lot of seaweed and algae-based supplements and food products, agar-agar, seaweed, red algae supplements. Are they sort of causing the same, wreaking the same havoc in the ocean as fishing?
Captain Watson. Captain Watson, the question is about supplements, algae supplements. Are they causing the same sort of problem in the ocean as fishing?
Well, I guess people still hear me because I can't hear anybody else.
Okay, Captain Watson, are the supplements that are put together from algae causing the same problems in the ocean as fishing? Captain Watson, can you hear me? Actually, I'm going to type the question to Captain Watson. Hold on a second, and Shane is going to take it. Oh.
What was the question?
Well, I gather we have some technical problems here. Unless that's, yes.
Captain Watson, can you hear me at all or no?
Are algae supplements causing the same issues as fishing? Well, the problem is that we're over exploiting everything from kelp to algae. I think that if algae is grown on land, then it's okay. But really, when you take it out of the ocean, you're taking food out of the mouths of all of those various species that need it. Also, seaweed harvesting is a real problem because, again, you're really disrupting an essential ecosystem. There are many species of fish that lay their eggs in seaweed, and it's absolutely necessary for the survival of many species. So, we don't recommend that things be pulled out of the ocean and marketed in that way. And, one of the criticisms in Seaspiracy of us is that, we do advocate that people don't eat fish, and people say, well, that's not reasonable because, a billion people in the world depend on fish to survive. Yes, that's true if you live in Africa and India, but they're not the problem. The problem is industrialized fishing operations, heavy gear industrialized fishing, where the fish have no place to hide. They cannot avoid, these giant trawlers and giant nets and drag trawlers and everything. And there really is no necessity for people to be eating a fish in a restaurant in New York or Paris or Miami that was caught off the coast of Antarctica and transported by jet planes all halfway around the world, or almost 3/4 of the way around the world for that purpose. And so the fishing industry, their attack on us for saying that we're against poor people in Africa is just totally bogus, because the people who are really causing problems in Africa and in India and places in poorer countries are the industrialized fishing operations, which are literally stealing the fish from those ecosystems and are causing a lot of problems. We've had fishing communities in Africa approach us and thank us because we've managed to drive the foreign draggers and trawlers off of out of their waters, and that has caused a revitalization of fish populations in their waters. For hundreds and hundreds of years, the shamans in Polynesia had this thing called kapu. And what that was a set of laws. And the laws protecting the fisheries were pretty exemplary. For instance, a shaman would say a bay in Hawaii or in Bora Bora, they would say that this bay is kapu, no fishing for 20 years. If anybody was caught fishing in a kapu bay, it was a death penalty. And people say, oh, that's a little extreme, but not from their point of view. They knew that if the fish disappeared, they would die. Their cultures would die, the people would die. And therefore, they took it very serious. The problem today, no kapu areas anywhere. Yes, we have marine reserves. Yes, we have sanctuaries, but that's where the poachers go because they know they're going to find fish there. So marine sanctuaries without enforcement are really useless. What's really important is that we need to have enforcement. Okay, and the question, after salmon spawn and are at the end of their life, is it okay to eat them? Now, here's the problem with salmon is that one of the most destructive industries right now is the raising of domestic salmon on salmon farms, these concentration camps, which are heavily depend upon chemicals in order to produce the product that they're producing. But even more serious is these salmon farms are transmitting viral diseases, zoonomic transmission of diseases to indigenous salmon populations because those indigenous populations do not have the benefit of the antibiotics that they pump into the domestic salmon. And probably the only so-called sustainable fishery in the world today is probably the wild Alaskan salmon fishery, and that's probably due to the hatcheries and that. But it seems to be healthy in Alaska, but it's not healthy in British Columbia because British Columbia has salmon farms, as does Chile, as does Scotland, as does Maine, as does Tasmania. And their indigenous fish populations are having a real problem because of salmon. One of the other interesting things about domestic salmon it's an Atlantic salmon, which is used in other places. Now, if I were to take a piranha from Amazonia and put it into a lake in Florida, that would be illegal. But yet here we are taking an Atlantic predator, a larger fish, and putting it into a Pacific ecosystem, and somehow or other that's allowed. And that's caused a diminishment of about 7 different species of indigenous salmon on the West Coast. The other thing not many people realize is that a farm-raised salmon does not produce a pinkish or reddish flesh. It's a dirty white, and that's not going to be marketable. So how do they get the color in it? They put dye in the food pellets to dye the flesh of the animal while it's still alive. And you can actually tell by the coloring, which is not very natural on that. But the wild salmon get their coloration from the fact that they feed on krill on the open ocean. But they can't do that in a domestic salmon farm, so they have to put dyes. So the domestic salmon fishery is heavily contaminated with antibiotics and chemicals. One other problem they have is salmon lice. And again, that's transmitted to wild salmon populations. And to kill those salmon lice, they actually have to bathe those salmon into a chemical bath, and that chemical gets into the ecosystem. And because salmon lice are almost like crustaceans, it also ends up killing millions of crabs and lobsters and such. So the salmon farming industry is an incredibly destructive industry. The other question, do you think you can make headway in Namibia where Spanish fleets are overfishing and as a result the Cape Fur seals are dying? We are working with the government of Namibia, and we're hoping that we'll be able to make some headway there soon to intervene against poachers. We're also we're in conversations with the Namibian government to try and get an end to the killing of the Cape Fur seals in Namibia. And I believe that we'll be able to achieve that. They're actually being killed because of a Turkish guy who lives in Australia who actually runs that entire industry. It's not a local thing. And I think that the Namibian government is, becoming aware of not only is it bad publicity, but it's also, it's an essential to maintain a healthy marine mammal population if you want to have a healthy fish population. And a lot of people think that by reducing the number of seals, for instance, they'll have more fish, but it doesn't work that way. If you want more fish, you need more seals. When Jacques Cartier came to the so-called New World in 1535, there was no shortage of fish. And there's also no shortage of seals. There's an estimated 45 million harp and hood seals and gray seals in the North Atlantic about 500 years ago. And now they've been reduced to less than 10% of their number. And so it's not the seals that have been reducing fish populations, it's overfishing. But how do marine mammals, increase the populations? Because they provide a nutrient base for this. Plus, they eat certain species which eat other species. For instance, the cod in the North Atlantic. Its main predator is not seals. Its main predator, aside from humans, are fish like oolacans and mackerel and those kind of fish, which are actually the main prey of the harp seals. So when you reduce harp seal populations, you increase predatory fish populations on certain species. So, nature has taken care of this very well for millions of years, and humans coming in with their so-called wildlife management programs have failed each and every time. This question, are you aware of what's going on the other areas of Florida with all the red tides, and is there anything we can do about it? Helping the manatee that are dying. Yeah, there's something you can do about it. Is stop dumping, water from those agricultural wastes into the sea. That's the cause for this. Red tide. There's an overproduction of certain type of harmful nutrients, which are not good for most marine environments, but do actually increase population of dinoflagellates, which is the cause for red tide and other things like that. I think that the Florida agricultural industry has been extremely irresponsible when it comes to dumping of agricultural residue. The agriculture, both on all sorts, whether it be the production of plants or production of animals, is using a lot of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides. They all end up in the ecosystems, and that does cause incredible damage. Agriculture is the primary cause for dead zones in the ocean, primary reason for groundwater pollution. The meat industry is actually the primary reason for groundwater pollution. And also the, contributors to climate change. And so, yes, we have to, I think that the solution to this is we have to adopt plant-based diets, and we have to be very, very careful of the kind of chemicals that are utilized on all agricultural products. Oh. And is there any other questions? What does the future look like? Well, we shall see. I think that 2050, is when all the world leaders were at the climate change conference in Glasgow, and they were saying that by 2050 we'll turn this all around. I don't know what kind of fantasies they're trying to produce here. I think one of the things that came out of the climate change conference is that they're going to stop deforestation by 2030. Well, when that was said, I think that the people in Brazil and in Canada were actually having a good laugh, because they know damn well that that's not going to happen. The problem is all these leaders go there and they make all these promises, but they don't maintain it. They don't follow through with any of them. I've attended the United Nations Conference on the Environment in 1972 in Stockholm, 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, the COP21 conference in Paris, and every single recommendation from any of those conferences, not one of them has been fulfilled. Not one. All it is a photo opportunity for politicians and a lot of promises that they have no intention of ever abiding by. The real movement for change is coming from young people around the world who understand that this is directly affecting their future. We now have a younger generation that has no understanding of what the future is going to be. I mean, we had a pretty good idea what the future was when we were younger. I'm 71 as of a couple of days ago. We had a pretty good idea what the future was going to be, but now the future is a mystery. We don't know what is going to happen. Climate change, destruction of species, and everything. It's really, nobody knows. And that is the big challenge. So, what is the future going to be? Well, it's going to be defined by what we do today. Many years ago, I learned a lesson, and that was, don't worry about the future. Focus on the present. What we do in the present will define what the future will be. And so that's all we really have the power to do, is to focus on the attention. And I think through a combination of courage, passion, and imagination, that we can turn it around. I think that through those three virtues, we can change things for the better. And I see more and more young people all the time who are approaching it in this matter. So that gives me a lot of hope. So thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and all the best. Thanks.